Several years ago, the pastor John Ortberg wrote a little book entitled, "When the Game is Over, the Pieces All Go Back in the Box." It was a book about the life lessons he learned from playing Monopoly with one of his grandmothers. She was, he said, the master of the game. She seemed unbeatable. Time and time again, he played his grandmother, and time again, he lost. And then the day occurred when he actually beat her in Monopoly. With excitement in his heart and a joy in his spirit, he rejoiced in that time that he could finally win the game of Monopoly. But then he noticed something, and then he heard something that his grandmother said. As she was carefully putting all the pieces back in the box, arranging them in the order in which they had come out of the box, she said to John Ortberg, "Johnny, I want you to remember that when the game is over, the pieces all go back in the box." Jesus once told a parable about a man of great wealth, a successful farmer who had barns full of grain. One year, he had the biggest harvest of all. His barns were nowhere near empty. He didn't know where he was going to store all of his grain. He worried about this, and then he struck upon an idea. He said, "I know what I will do. I will tear down my old barns and build bigger barns." Satisfied that he had found an answer to his problem, he went to sleep that night, and as fate would have it, the angel of death came to visit and said, "Tonight your soul is required of you." When Jesus finished this parable, this story, he turned to his listeners and asked, "Whose barns are they now?" Immediately after that teaching, Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures here on earth, where moth and rust can consume and destroy, but rather store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where there is neither moth nor rust." "Be careful where you put your treasure," he said, "for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." I don't think he was saying this as an encouragement for his disciples or those listening to him to do a moral inventory, although he may have been, but I think he was doing a proverbial statement of fact. You can tell a great deal about a person by what is important in their life. You can tell where their treasure is by where they put their heart, their energies, their passions, and their financial resources. Jesus went on to say that we have to be ready, we have to be alert, we have to be like those slaves who keep their lamps lit, waiting for the bridegroom to come back for the celebration, for he may come back at a late hour or early, we do not know which. That we need to be like a homeowner who is ever vigilant in keeping their house guarded, lest burglars or thieves enter into it and take the possessions. For, Jesus said, if the homeowner had known when the thieves were going to arrive, he would have been prepared. These teachings of Jesus tell us that we need to look at our lives and where we have invested our lives, and that we need to be ever vigilant in trying to do the work of the kingdom. The work of the kingdom comes to us in many different places, in many different times, most often in the common of things and at the most unexpected of times. The kingdom of God may break in upon our lives when we see a coworker who is crying at their desk and we ask if there's some way that we can help. It is in the face of grieving families whose loved ones have been shot and killed in random acts of violence. Most recently in El Paso, Texas, or in Dayton, Ohio, but even in my own city on the near north side and the south side of this city. The kingdom of God may break into our lives when we feed a hungry child or provide a home for someone who's halfway around the world, or when we minister to our neighbor in the simplest of things, perhaps mowing their lawn when they have simply run out of time. The kingdom of God breaks upon us, and we who take Jesus seriously are called to be builders of that kingdom. It's a high order. It's a great challenge. I'm Frosty Crummell, the minister at First Federated Church, wishing you a most blessed week.